when drug prohibition comes and happens, like let's say in Colombia, they shut it all down, right? It moved to Peru and Bolivia, right? So it never stops anywhere. So let's say one country gets super crazy on it. It just moves to another country and makes them worse. You could talk a little bit about opium.
Oh, about like in Afghanistan. I have a few friends. Actually, I might even be interested in talking to a couple of those friends, like maybe invite them on the next, like, future podcasts. Because there are some people that I know directly that were infantry that guarded opium fields in Afghanistan or burned opium fields in Afghanistan and or did both. And they thought at the moment, they're like, why the fuck are we guarding poppy fields for? They're like, well, the excuse was like, hey, we're guarding them for the farmers because that's the only way they know how to make money. But that way they don't, that the terrorists can't use it for their money. So, but then when you look at the amount of heroin, like opium coming out of that country, it went from like 3% of the world to like, it ended up supplying 96% of the world's opium. You know what I mean?
Can you see this chart? So this is BBC, and here in the United States, before the US-led invasion got rid of the Taliban shut it down. What I'm telling you is that when a government goes in and shuts it down, it just moves somewhere else. So moving somewhere else, the United States invaded, and then this is what happened to opium. And this is BBC. We have secondhand, because I heard the same thing from my cousin and lots of people that were over there in Afghanistan. I was occupying Japan my whole time in, but it's not hard to find evidence from people that were there. But I mean, those numbers right there are extremely compelling. Obviously, lowered opium production, and we did not. We did the opposite. So if drugs are here in America, why are we over there guarding opium fields? So that introduces the question of corruption. And so again, the thesis here was that the war on drugs is the war on the climate. Amount of money being spent on oil in a war, if we could replace oil with hemp, then isn't that the number one problem with the environment, is that the fossil fuels? We could go to nothing. That's what they determined in, it was France, right? That the international community came to. And the point was that we were supposed to completely get off fossil fuels by 2050.
We need to.
We're all going to fucking die. And that's not something I really delved into in research, because I'm making those assumptions that everybody knows that fossil fuels are causing the problem in the environment. And the people that don't want it, they want to take a political stance against it. It's like, well, do a little bit of research. And if you can find some research that supports you, then okay. But last I checked, 99.9% of scientists disagree with you. And I'm on the empirical side of things. I want to see evidence. And if you don't have any evidence, then it's not true. And the evidence is definitely indicating that fossil fuels and our logging problem destroying our ecosystem for the whole world. And there's also, have you seen that?
You're talking about the Pacific vortex?
Not just the Pacific, it's every major ocean.
Like it's like the size of Texas, or like double the size of Texas or something like that. Just a floating trash. Oh my God, dude. Like, it's
the western garbage patch and the eastern carbon. And it just floats around on these vortexes all throughout the world.
And since it's in the international waters, I don't think anyone's taking responsibility for it. Any like government.
We're going to have to in about 10 or 20 years.
The oceans are swimming in it. Rivers are choked with it. Coastlines are collecting it. Landfills are clogged with it. Our trash bags are filled with it. And it's even floating in the air we breathe.
Imagine spreading out 9 billion metric tons evenly. We could cover an area the size of Argentina or California 6 times over.
It's plastic, the material we can't seem to live without that also lasts longer than a lifetime.
What happens with the ocean is that the plankton and the bacteria in there put out oxygen. And once it becomes too acidic, a new kind of bacteria is going to take over that produces sulfur.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we'll all die from, is inhaling sulfur instead of oxygen. And we don't have lungs designed for that. Yeah. So again, this is source 16, drugs. Tough drug policies have zero net effect on usage and availability. So that's exactly what I was pointing to earlier. So in contrast, marijuana legalization would save roughly $7.7 billion per year and $6 billion in tax revenue. The net total is $13.7 billion we would make per year, or enough to educate over 500,000 students. This Harvard economist said that we'd make $65 billion a year, and the drug cartels will lose 20% of their annual income. So if we want to win the war on drugs, it comes from legalizing. That's the victory.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
How much does it cost to police drug offenses? $504 billion a year. Costs 73,000 to prosecute for a conviction. Here's what we're spending right now. So treatment is 40% of our budget, and prevention is 5%. Law enforcement is 33%. Innovation and international policy. So you see the biggest part of the pie is those three fighting. Yeah. So if you're suspected of a drug crime, they can take your stuff in Chicago, where you're from, or you're at right now.
Yeah.
The homicide clearance rate in 91 went down 40%, but the drug arrest rate went up 264%. So what we're telling you here is that you're more likely to be arrested as a drug user, less likely to be arrested as a killer. 50% likely in the late 2000s compared to 1990s. So that means if you get murdered now, there's a 50% less likely chance that your murderer is going to get caught because the police are out there locking up drug users because of this.
Yeah, I can't wait for the data to come out. Yeah, I can't wait for the new data to come out, because since Illinois had completely legalized it for recreational use, now I'm really curious, what's going to happen to the numbers, and if you're right, which I think you are, then I feel like those numbers are going to there's a lot of effect that's going to happen on these numbers, and I can't wait till the new data comes out.
So I was watching this video here, number 24, in the sources. They go through into these really indigenous areas of Peru, and they'll destroy their airstrips because they're suspected of using drugs. So these people are growing drugs or whatever, but the drug traffickers come in armed, and they're like, okay, you're going to grow these drugs, right? And so the indigenous are like, okay, well, what else are we going to do? We're not going to die. And then the government comes in and blows up their airstrips and makes it impossible for them, and they cut all these crops down. And so this war on drugs is a war on the indigenous populations there and their ecosystems that they have, because everybody's seen the videos of the jungles in South America and how they are really good covers for cocaine production.
Yeah. So
again, if you legalize it, that takes away a lot of the problem towards the environment.
God, they just destroy all of that?
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
There would be no more cocoa leaves if there was no profit to be had. So all this destruction, and when you interview these locals, they're like, what do you want us to do? You want us to just, we can't sell anything else. Nothing else will grow or sell here. So we have to do this. What do you want? It's like, are we just supposed to die? So coke is harvestable in 3 months. Coffee is their only other option. And it's harvestable in 2 years. So the choice for the poor people is 3 months from now, I get some money from the cocaine people. And they're also not going to shoot me for it.